Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My hair is getting long, and I don't like it. Largely because it's getting warm, and my hair, like, it's not as thick as some other people's, but like, my hair is on the thicker side, and it's warm, and I'm naturally a hot person, so it's like, bleh. Um, as you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, we are talking about what to keep in mind when writing a book review and just all that jazz. Now, pseudo disclaimer of sorts. This is meant for non-professional readers, non-professional book reviewers, largely because like I've seen a lot of people who are like they're coming into the hobby and saying like I don't know how to review the book. I don't know how to approach reviewing the book. Like is there a protocol I have to follow? And the long and short of it is no, there isn't a set protocol. And this is something I'll talk about in like the first set tip. But most reviews, unless it is a professional review from a professional reviewer, any reviews you look at are subjective, meaning there is some level of personal emotion going into the review, and it's not an objective look at the book. It's not a look at the book stepping back and be like, okay, does this make sense? Is the structure good? Is the flow good? And like that, those things do factor into how people review the books when they how people review books, even if it is just a hobby for them. But like 9 times out of 10, while that does factor into the review for hobbyists, even if they're a bookish influencer, bookish content creator, um, there is some level of hobbyesque hobbiness to it because one, that's most likely not their only hobby, and two, like even though they're getting money off of that specific hobby, off of reading and talking about books and reviewing books, like there are other things that factor into their life. So it's like there is a large amount of subjectiveness to it, and the same thing can be said for professional book reviewers. Um, but professional book reviewers are paid specifically to review books. Where if you look at like a bookish content creator, they're more so paid to create content about books, and it's not necessarily only reviews. It's to talk about books. It's to go book shopping. It's to share what they've hauled, share what they've unhauled, share the books they've liked recently, share books they didn't like recently, talk about the authors that they like, um, talk about different genres and so on and so forth. So it's like there's a whole lot more that factors into being a bookish content creator or influencer than there is factoring into being a book reviewer. Um, like there is still quite a bit that factors into being a book reviewer. It's it's a little bit more nuanced than just bookish related content. So I have compiled a list of 13 things to keep in mind when reviewing a book. I have screenshots here on my iPad. Just because again my computer is on the fritz right now and I'm looking into getting another one, either getting a used one from my grandparents that they're no longer using, or like I'll figure something out, but that's probably gonna be my the best option. So that, with that being said, I'm recording on my phone, editing, and now I'm uploading on my phone. So it's like I can't look to my computer for those specific notes. So iPad. Anyway, so again I have 13. The first one, like I kind of mentioned earlier, most star ratings and reviews are subjective. Again, if you're looking at someone who reviews books professionally, who gets paid specifically for reviewing books, there might be a bit more objectivity to it. but most star ratings and reviews are subjective, meaning that there is a lot more emotion and personal opinion going into the review. And that is something to keep in mind. And I talk about this later. Want to I talk about this in the sixth thing, but like reviews are subjective, so that means that negative reviews are also subjective, which does not necessarily mean that negative reviews are a bad thing. That it's a bad book if there's a lot of negative reviews. And sometimes that is the case. If there's a lot of negative reviews, sometimes that does mean that the book is bad. Um, but sometimes you really can't go with star ratings and reviews, and sometimes you can't let lower star ratings and negative reviews hold you back from reading a specific book. So, because, like I said, they're subjective, and just because someone doesn't like a specific book doesn't mean you won't like that specific book. Especially if like it's like two different genres. Like if you're looking at a romance book and you are a romance girly or a romance person, and someone reviews the book and gave it 2 stars and says they did not like it one bit, and then you go to their profile and see that they mostly read and enjoy sci-fi books that have very little to no romance in them. And that says quite a bit. You know, it's like they don't normally read romance, so it's one-off romance book that they reviewed and gave a 2 stars to, and a low review to, negative review to. That was one-off for them. That was like, oh, let me try. And if you're a romance person, you can't let that one or like those 5 negative reviews of a romance book fully turn you off from that specific book. So it's all about subjectivity, you guys. Not everyone takes in the book the same way. So the next one is this one. This next one is kind of like a double-edged sword here because largely because I do see both sides to this. And the point is, this next one is that reviews are not meant for the author or authors. They're meant for the readers. Now, like I said, this one is a little bit of a double-edged sword here because oftentimes I do think, and this one also I think factors into like negative reviews not being bad things, because oftentimes I do think that authors, and like I do have a couple, another point talking about this as well, but I do think that authors can learn from less than stellar reviews. That I do think that they can learn from negative reviews, but reviews are not meant for the author. Even the professional reviews are not meant for the author. Like to an extent, I think if authors, if any type of review is meant for an author or authors, I would think it would be more so the professional reviews because again, like I said, there's a little bit more objectiveness to professional reviews than non-professional reviews. Um, so it's like it's one of those things where it's like it is a double-edged sword. But for the most part, reviews are not meant for the authors. They're meant for other readers. They're meant to tell people like, okay, this is a slower paced book, and the reviewer doesn't really like slower paced books, but you, another reader, do like slower paced books. So it's like it reviews tell other readers what worked and didn't work for them. And what worked and did not work for one reader will not match up with what did and did not work for another reader. So a slow burn romance book might not work very well for a high stakes sci-fi reader. So it's one of those things where it's like reviews are not meant for the authors. Unless and this is also where it's a double edged, unless they're approaching these books as a reader, as a potential reader of these books, and not as an author in that genre of that book, of specific tropes. Like, unless authors are approaching these reviews as readers and not authors, then it's like it's one of those things where it's like they do have to approach them. If they're looking at the reviews, it's more so how they're approaching it. And again, I do think authors can learn from reviews and learn from less than stellar reviews, like I said, but author reviews are not meant for authors at the end of the day. The next one is, unless you're a professional book reviewer or trying to set yourself up as a book reviewer, as someone whose main thing is reviewing books, unless you're trying to set yourself up as that or are already doing that as a job and getting paid for that, your review does not have to be perfect. It does not, like, your structure, the structure of your review does not have to be perfect. Grammar doesn't have to be perfect. Grammar helps and structure helps, but it does not have to be perfect. And like, you can just vibe your review. I do talk about that a little bit later, but like, it's not as important when you're not necessarily a professional reviewer trying to set yourself up as a book review content creator. So the next one is, this is number 4. Authors should not be tagged in books. Authors should not be tagged in book reviews unless it's a minimum of 4 to 4.5 stars. Now this can really vary because it's one of those things where it's like some people rarely hand out 5 stars. Other people hand out Some people rarely hand out 5 stars, and then you have other people who hand out 5 stars left and right, both of which are perfectly acceptable. It is okay to be giving 5 stars to every single book you read. Um, it is perfectly okay, and it's also okay to very rarely give 5 stars. It's very subjective, like I mentioned earlier, and that's why I had that one be the first one because all of these are subjective. Um, so it's like the thing is I think 5 star ratings, the star rating system, is a subjective thing, and it's hard to have a narrowed down consensus for what that star rating should apply to. But I think there is like a general kind of overarching umbrella consensus where it's like 5 stars was like a really good book, you enjoyed it. 3 stars, what it's like a mid book, not amazing, not great, but not terrible either. And then 1 stars is like terrible. Again, it's subjective. Um, so unless like, and this is why I say 4 to 4.5 stars minimum, um, because again, some people don't hand out 5 stars, so it's like maybe for them a 4 star review would be worthy, like not worthy enough, but a 4 star review would be a really good review to tag an author in because it's like, hey, I really enjoyed this book. I want to let the author know. And if you're handing out 5 stars left and right, which is also perfectly okay, like a 5 star review would be great to tag an author in. 3 stars, that's where it can kind of start to get a little bit hit or miss because you like, again, they're subjective. So you might look at a 3 star rating as, hey, this is pretty good. It was perfect, but it was pretty good. And then you may think, okay, because I'm doing a pretty good review, it's 3 stars, it's pretty good, I'm going to tag the author. The author might understand, the author who might also be a reader might understand or might think that 3 stars is mid. It wasn't great, it wasn't amazing, but it was not bad either. It was mid. So if they see that you tag them in a 3 star rating, it's like, oh, like they wanted to let me know that they thought my book was mid. And like, oftentimes in reviews, we see the star rating first, and if you're posting it on social media, that habit is to put the star rating first. So if they say 3.5, it's like, oh, they think my book's mid. I'm just going to scroll past this because I don't want to read a negative review. I don't want to read a less than stellar review, which is perfectly fine. That's totally their prerogative. And again, like I mentioned earlier, reviews aren't for authors. The reviews of their own books are not for authors. Um, so that's a good way to clarify it. Reviews of their own books are not for the authors themselves. Um, like one thing I can think of is like J.R.R. Tolkien. The reviews for his own books would not necessarily be for Tolkien to read. If you look over here, the Bloodsworn series, John Gwynne, the reviews for those would not be something for John Gwynne to read. But reviews for the Bloodsworn series would be something Tolkien, if he were still alive today, could read. Be like, oh, this sounds interesting. And the reviews of Lord of the Rings would be something John Gwynne could look into and read to see if Lord of the Rings would be something John Gwynne was interested in. But getting back on topic, they shouldn't be tagged in something that is less than 4 stars at the very bare minimum. Just because 4 stars, I feel like collectively is like really good. It's not perfect enough. It's not great enough to be 5 stars or like anything higher than 4 stars, but it's still pretty darn good. So I think at the end of the day, there's just the general consensus that you shouldn't tag authors in reviews. And on the one hand, I do agree with that because, like I said, like authors should not be reviews of their own books are not for authors. Reviews are not an author space. Um, but it's like, like that's on the one hand, and on the other hand, I do think sometimes it's good for an author to hear to see that like someone really enjoyed their book, and sometimes like that's the only way you kind of like get it across to them, like tagging them on social media. Um, I just heard something behind me. My book is haunted. Anyway, because sometimes like you don't know if they're on reading tracker apps. You don't know what social media platforms are on. So sometimes a tag on Instagram or a tag on Twitter is the best way to go about that. So unless it is like I said at the very least bare minimum, it should be 4 stars before you even consider tagging an author in a review. Um, Ideally 4.5 or higher for a star rating, but like I said, no, absolutely no lower than 4 stars. The next one is you do not have to be nice in your review as long as you're not bashing the author or being derogatory, um, or depending on skin colors and differentiations, as long as you're not being racist or xenophobic. Like, you don't have to be nice in the review. You can say this book was shit. As long as you're not saying the author is shit, again, it really depends. Um, I would say that J.K. Rowling is shit. But as long as you're not saying the author is shit and you're just saying the book is shit, you don't have to be nice in the reviews. So, like, I feel like that one's kind of obvious, kind of self-explanatory. So I'm gonna move on. The next one is a negative review is not a bad thing. This is one I kind of talked about earlier, but I'll touch on it on its own now. But kind of like what I was saying, sometimes a negative review, depending on the context, can tell an author like this would be a situation where they are actively looking at negative reviews or actively looking at reviews. A negative review can see like maybe what they did wrong, maybe not wrong, or maybe what they could have done better with their book. Maybe there were a couple of plot holes in their book. Maybe there was a couple of situations where in one chapter they said one thing, a later chapter they said another thing, and it clashes. Or maybe it was a situation where like a book was marketed as romance, but there was little to no romance in it. So that's where I think an author can learn from a not so great, less than stellar review. But in that same lane, like something being marketed wrong, plot holes, loopholes, etc., so on and so forth, those really help readers out being like, okay, I'm seeing these reviews of this book, and there have been a couple of people said that there's like a couple of plot holes, and some readers do not like plot So it's like everything has to be airtight. And so it's like if you're one of those people and you're seeing a lot of reviews of this one book where it's like there's a couple of plot holes in this, that might be something that you want to avoid. Whereas if you don't mind plot holes, you wouldn't necessarily have to avoid it. But if you're a big romance person and you're seeing reviews for a book saying this doesn't have a whole lot, if any, romance, you know to not read the book with very little romance. It's kind of that deal where it's like a negative review is not a bad thing. It lets other readers know what exactly is going on in the book. Because oftentimes in the marketing of books, you just hear people singing the book's praises. And on TikTok a lot too, you just hear people singing the praises of certain books. And you need some negative reviews to kind of balance it out and to give you a more rounded look. So negative reviews are not a bad thing. And again, as long as you're not bashing the author, like you don't need to be nice in a review. You can do a totally negative review. As long as you're not bashing the author and shit talking the author, we're good. So the next one is I had this set up nicely. Okay. There we go. The next one is that summaries are no longer as important. They still help, but most reviews are posted online somehow on the internet, like on a subreddit or on a forum post, on a blog post, or they're posted on book trackers like Goodreads, for example, even though I don't use Goodreads anymore, or on Storygraph, or on Fable. I think there's another one called Bookly, or maybe they're also posted on social media, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky. So most reviews are now posted in a way where you can easily access a summary of the book. You can open a new tab in your browser. You can open a tab in your browser, say book title by insert author, and you'll get a summary of the book. Or you can go to the book tracker and if you're in a book tracker, you see the review for the book and you click on the book title and it'll take you to that specific book page with the summary. Um, and if you're online somehow, like you're on your phone in your default browser on your phone or on your iPad or um, tablet device, and you're seeing a review, you can open up a tab, like I said, and say book title by author name, and you'll find a summary of the book. And usually, we now have pretty quick access to figuring out the summary of a book. So unless you are a professional reviewer, summaries are not as important. Now, doing like a professional review, like a 1 to 2 line summary of the book, totally fine. But unless you're not doing it professionally, and unless you're not trying to set yourself up to do book reviews, summaries are not as important. Now, something I've been doing on my YouTube channel is I do try to talk about the books that I'm reading on my channel a little bit more. And a large part of that is because, at least in the videos, most people are not like pausing to open up a new tab, even though that is very accessible and very easy to do. Um, most people are just watching it through. So it's like that's why I've been trying to include the descriptions a little bit more in my videos. I don't always do it just because sometimes I'm just really in the moment. But we are in a time and place, even if we don't necessarily do it, we are in a time and place where we have things very easily accessible. We don't necessarily need the physical book. We don't necessarily need some form of the book to access a summary. So the next one is it is okay to let things other than logic and summaries lead the review. You can lead based on vibes, based on emotions, etc. So you can lead with the overall feel of the book. And that means basically like most often when you're in school, you're leading with a 1 to 2 line summary of the book if you have to do like a book review for school. Because I remember having to do a couple. And then if you're a professional book reviewer or you're setting yourself up to do book reviewing on your social media platforms, like a 1 to 2 line summary really does help out. But when you're not doing it professionally, like you could just say, I went with this book for the vibes. It was beachy summer vibes with pina coladas and sunsets and romance. You can go based on the vibes. This reminded me of my trip to Hawaii. You can go based on nostalgia. This book made me feel really happy and got me out of a reading slump or got me out of a depression. Like, you can go based off of anything. And honestly, I think that appeals more to the average reader, to the average person, than a professional book review. Because it's like sometimes most people are mood readers, I think. I am a mood reader, and I think most people, to some extent, are mood readers. Because sometimes you can set a TBR, and then, like, they'll have, like, a June TBR post on Instagram or on YouTube or wherever. They'll have a June TBR post. And then in their June wrap up video, maybe they went with, like, maybe they had 6 books in their June TBR file. And then in their June wrap up post, they read 5 of those books, didn't read the 6th book because they weren't feeling like it, but read a different 6th book because they were feeling like it. It's like, I think most people are mood readers. And because of that, I do think people gravitate more towards reviews that do talk about the vibes, do talk about how the books make them feel. And I think they gravitate towards that more because, like, when you're in a certain mood for books, like, I am very much this kind of person where, like, I really like I do like darker themes or darker topics in my shows, in my movies, in my books, but I personally really have to be in the right mindset for it. Like, one of my favorite anime shows is Trinity Blood. I hate the ending for Trinity Blood. I never watch it. Me and endings is a whole other video topic, but, like, I love Trinity Blood. But I do have to kind of be in the right mindset for it. And then Shogun is another good example. I love Shogun, but when I was watching it, I really had to be in the right mindset for it. So it's one of those things where it's like, if I'm really in the mindset, I'm gonna look for something that's like Shogun, or maybe even read physical books. I do not have it though. I think I donated it to my library. But anyway, um, I'm gonna look for Shogun or something like Shogun. I'm gonna look for Trinity Blood or something like Trinity Blood when I'm in the right mindset for it. But if I'm not in the right mindset for it, I'm not gonna go for this. Like, I'll talk about them and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I love these shows, but I'm not gonna go for it. And, like, the same thing with, like, Malice. Like, I put it on pause right now by John Gwynn. Malice by John Gwynn. I put it on pause because, one, because I was reading quite a few other books and I had a few books checked out from the library. So I was like, okay, I just need to put this chunky book on hold right now. But, like, I wasn't quite in the mood for a chunky book. I still want to read it and I'm still trying to get through it, but it's like, I'm not always in the mood for a chunky book. So it's kind of like that, where it's like, we are mood readers in our course. Even if some people are more mood readers than others, like, that is going to influence how we review our books, and that is going to influence how people look for certain books, which is why I think it's perfectly okay. Getting back on topic, I think it's perfectly okay to go with the vibes of the book and how it made you feel. So, anyway, the next one. This is 6, 7, 8, 9 book journals and book review journals can be really helpful, but it is one of those things where they're not for everyone. I do love a good journal, so I do love a good book journal. But because I do the storygraph a whole lot, a book journal would really have to be something different enough. Like, it would still incorporate the title of the book and start rating in my review and so on and so forth. It would still include all of that stuff. But it would have to be different enough from what I do on the storygraph for me to commit to it and stick with it, because I've done it in the past before. I've done book review journals in the past before, and I've never really stuck with it fully because it's always been sort of the same as to what I do on the story graph. Um, or what I would do on Goodreads when I was still using Goodreads. So it's like they can really help, but it's not for everyone, and it's not going to help everyone. So there's that. Book journals and book review journals, I do recommend trying it out to see if it would be for you. And if you're not necessarily a physical journal person, there are other formats on. You can get like a digital one through Etsy. Like I know of like one or two, I think. Or you can get like a digital version from like I think I don't know if like all book journals have like digital versions, but you can look up journals that have digital versions, or look up like files for examples and then do your own if you want to try it out. So the next one is kind of going back to like book the going back to like structure stuff and all that jazz is oh wait no yeah, so like going back to like structure stuff, your review does not have to look and sound like someone else's review. And I do see this a lot where it's like, oh my gosh, this person was saying XYZ, and I felt the same way, but I also had some different opinions, but I'm afraid to say something different from them. And it's like, at the end of the day, like, you, even if two people like the same book, they still absorbed those characters, that story, the plot, the dynamics. Two people who enjoyed a book will absorb the book and the information differently. No matter how much their shared opinions line up, they still absorbed the book and its plot differently. So that's why it's like it doesn't have to look and sound like someone else's review, because it should look and sound like your own review. So the next one is you do not have to be posting reviews to social media if you do not want to, even if you already post about books. Now sometimes this is kind of like a niche thing. Like let's say you post TBRs. Let's say you post like hopeful TBR piles, and you post book hauls, book unhauls, going to the library, but you don't post book reviews. You have your niche of getting books either from a bookstore or from your local library. You have your niche of getting books and reading books, but you're not necessarily part of the niche of reviewing books. You don't have to review books just because everyone else is. You don't have to post it to social media just because everyone else is. And yeah, sometimes it can help talking on social media about book reviews because it can engage with, it can help like, one, it can help engagement, two, it can help just like the dynamics of like understanding certain books better, because like there are books that I've read that like to this day I still don't fully grasp, and not necessarily in a bad way, but when I've talked about them on social media, and then I've had discussions about certain books, it's like, oh, that's what that one point in this book meant, and it just totally went over my head because it wasn't my lived experience. So that kind of a deal. But again, you do not have to post to social media if you do not want to. When it comes to book reviews, especially if it's not necessarily your niche. So you don't have to share it to social media. You can just post it to like the Storygraph app, your reading tracker. You can put it in your book journal, put it in your book review journal, and then just be done with it. So the next one, number 12, I do have a 13th one, but in my list, I haven't written it down yet, but I do have a 13th one. Lucky 13. Anyway, the 12th one is when you go into a book, you do not want to immediately go down the review rabbit hole. And what I mean by this is oftentimes we're kind of sucked into, oh, I'm interested in this book, let me go into the reviews. When sometimes you just need to go into it blind. Like sometimes you need to go into it without certain expectations set by the reviews. And like for me, a good example, River Enchanted duology, the Elements of Cadence duology. This one I heard about, but I I didn't go down the review rabbit hole, and I feel like if I did, I might not have enjoyed it as much. And like I read it and I absolutely loved it. And then let's see what's another good one. Like For Whom the Bell Tolls, which I have right here. For Whom the Bell Tolls. If I had waited to get it, and like a large part of this is if I wasn't a fan of the House Bell series. Um, but if I did go down the review rabbit hole, I might have been a little bit more hesitant to do so because I do think there was one review I saw for it where it was like, oh, it's another Jane Doe type situation coming in and kind of helping fix some stuff, which is like on the one hand, yes, but at the same time, it's like sometimes we need that kind of character because I feel like we're all in a sense Jane and John Doe's. So sometimes we need that simplicity of the character of a Jane Doe type character, um, not necessarily Mary Sue, because I feel like you have like Jane Doe, where it's like just like a basic average character, and then you have like Mary Sue who comes in and is like perfect at everything, amazing at everything, doesn't have to train, doesn't have to practice anything, and is just perfect at everything from the get go. I don't think Jane Doe, John Doe. I don't know what like the male Mary Sue equivalent would be, but like Jane Doe, John Doe isn't quite like that. I think they are basic characters, but you still have to see them trying. You still have to see them going through the motions of attempting to do stuff and not getting it on the first try, of having to practice, having to train, or there is the assumption that they've practiced and trained to get to that point. Like I think a good example of this, um, and I think she was better in the books. Eowyn in Lord of the Rings. I think she definitely is. It's kind of a double edged sword because I do think they give her a little bit more advocacy in the movies, but at the same time, they do kind of strip her down to wanting to be a fighter, but also being in love with Aragorn. Um, and there's like that's the only parts of her personality in the movie, but um, I do think like there is the assumption with Eowyn's character, like you don't see her, like you do see her practicing a little bit, and you do see her using a sword and keeping up her skills in the movie. But there is the assumption she knows how to use a sword, and it's not because she tried it and got it on the first try, but it's because she practiced with it. It's because she worked with it. It's because she felt like she had no other choice but to practice and get good at it. Um, so it's like I feel like anyone is like a good Jane Doe type of character because she's like she's not a Mary Sue. She's not like perfect on the first run. But she does. She's kind of like your normal average character, like a normal human being, where it's like you have Arwen and Galadriel, and you have the elves, and it's like they're perfect, and then you have Eowyn, and it's like that's something I love about her character too. So that's a good example where it's like you don't getting back on topic, but it's like you don't want to get into like the re- review rabbit hole because sometimes you'll start reading like the negative reviews. Like I've read some negative reviews about something about that Hulu up, and I'm just like, oh my god, no, no, no. You don't want to get into that before getting into a book or even afterwards because that can really like kill your vibe. So the 13th one is at the end of the day, we just need to have fun with it. And we just need to have a good time with reading and with reviewing books because, like I said quite a few times at this point, more often than not, when you're looking at reviews, these are not done by professionals. These are done by your average reader who is just trying to have a good time with their books. So, at the end of the day, we just need to have fun with it. So, if you've made it this far in the video, let me know. Ooh, you're shaking a bit, sorry. If you made it this far in the video, let me know what your favorite book was so far this year at this point in time. And thank you all for watching. I'll see you all next.